In the pledge. Okay, I'm looking for an approval of the minutes.
So moved.
Second?
Okay, we got a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Communications from the student board reps.
Good evening, members of the Board of Education and parents. We are excited to share some of the highlights from our school's first ever homecoming weekend, which was a huge success. We kicked things off with an incredible pep rally, followed by our senior night football game, and wrapped up with an unforgettable homecoming dance. The homecoming dance was a major hit, drawing the largest crowd in over 5 years. Due to the overwhelming interest, we had to increase the number of tickets sold this year, ultimately welcoming 360 students to the event. To ensure everyone's safety, all attendees were breathalyzed, and we're proud to report that there was no incident making it a safe and fun celebration for all. Additionally, as we mark the end of Q1, we like to remind everyone that Parents' Conference are happening tonight, and report cards were sent home this afternoon. It's a great time for students, parents, and teachers to connect and discuss progress. There has been ongoing vandalism in the high school bathrooms, and we are actively working to address this issue. In collaboration with Mr. Arroyan, we are taking steps to improve the situation by repainting the stalls and increasing cleaning efforts to maintain a more respectful and welcoming environment for all students.
As for our district report, Thalberg School is in the final stages of major courtyard makeover. With material donations, the commitment of volunteers in the community, and a lot of hard work, the courtyard has been transformed into a wonderful space for students to enjoy. Thalberg would like to thank Patrick O'Keefe and his volunteer students from VOAG for installing the turf to complete this fantastic project at Thalberg. As for JFK, their annual Veterans Day concert and the reception were well attended by family members of students and staff who are veterans or actively serving in the military. Members of the Southington branch of the American Legion were also in attendance. This event continues to be one of the major highlights at JFK each year, and we are happy to recognize and honor our veterans in this special way. Thank you to Mr. Dave Brennan, Mr. Lou Urso, Mr. Wayne White, and our very own Board of Education member, Mr. Jasper Williams, for speaking with our students last week for their service to the country. We appreciate their time educating our students and sharing their firsthand experience with them. JFK is also excited to be one of the stops on Valentine the Clown's Toy Express next month. Beginning Monday, students at JFK will work towards a school-wide goal of collecting over 250 new or unused toys for the toy drive. All donations are due to JFK by December 4th. The Toy Express will make its stop at JFK on December 6th for pickup. We are excited to support this wonderful event. As for South End, their 5th grade STEPS ambassadors have been mentoring younger students in primary classrooms each morning. Students are focusing on letter formation, letter recognition, partner reading, and math fluency. We are incredibly proud of the dedication of our 5th graders. In DePaulo, students recently participated in several meaningful activities for Veterans Day. Some interviewed veterans, while others wrote letters through Operation Gratitude to veterans, new recruits, active soldiers, and wounded warriors. Some of these letters will be sent to the VA hospital in Newington. DePaulo also wrapped up its fall sports season. Boys cross country team placed third at the state meet in Wickham Park. Students in the Animal Helpers program had their first visit to Leaf last week, where they learned about caring for new animals. And in exciting news, the DePaulo recently launched an international club to celebrate and explore the diverse cultures of our student body. Each month will focus on a different culture, including its geography, history, food, and more. The first meeting was held today. And lastly, members of the DePaulo Unified Sports attended a leadership summit where they heard from a motivational speaker and participated in team building activities with students and other schools.
And here's our sports report. The girls volleyball team wrapped up their season yesterday in the semi-final after an outstanding run, showcasing their hard work and determination. Meanwhile, the cross-country team is celebrating the success of two of its teammates who will be advancing to the New England Championships. It's been a great success for both teams, and we are proud of their accomplishments. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll now take communications from Board of Ed. Mr. Brown?
Yeah, I'd like to show a shout out to the people who ran the convocation last week. It's interesting to have it this time of year. We're used to having it before school starts, and it was rather different this year, but I especially want to give a shout out to Mr. Pepe. I think he's responsible mostly for the the student interview that was held. It was terrific. And Mr. Bedancy, I'm sure, was behind some of this also. So I want to thank the two of you. Also, our chairwoman, Mrs. Clark, did a great job with her speech. And I know we're not supposed to mention names, so I won't, but I'll allude to some people so that you can figure out who they are. There were two teachers in the high school social studies department who were mentioned in the video by a student as being special for them, listening to this woman and paying attention to her needs. And the two people that Terry and I know very well in our department, and we are very proud of them. And also the teacher of the year did a great job with her speech. So all in all, it was very student-centered, very teacher-centered. Gone are the days we were told how many desks were moved and how many floors were polished, which I do remember. So I want to thank you, and it was a really wonderful event. Thank you.
Okay, anyone else? So I've got a couple of things. I did have the privilege of attending two veterans events at JFK. On Friday, I was able to attend with Mr. Lou Urso and Mr. Wayne White. They're both two veterans from town, and was able to speak to the students at JFK. I wasn't planning on speaking. I was surprised and asked to come up and speak kind of on the spot, but it was a great experience. It was awesome to see the engagement from the students as well. And I'm really proud that our town and that our school district has these events for veterans. I think it's important. One, it's important to recognize veterans, but two, also, like, we inspire our youth when they hear these stories. I've said it before, and I won't apologize for being so passionate about veterans issues, but I joined the service because I went in an ROTC program and was exposed to it through school. And I wasn't ready for college, and if it hadn't been for that, I don't know where I would be today. So I think it's a great opportunity, and I'm really proud of our district for doing that. One other thing, unfortunately not really a highlight, I got an email today from STEPS. I guess last night they participated with the Southington Police Department conducting undercover compliance checks for tobacco and nicotine in town. They went to 12 stores, and 50% of those stores failed and sold to minors. So it's So it's, I think it's very important that we kind of get that kind of word out. It's important that parents understand the risks that are out there. Obviously, talk to your children. And, again, I'm happy to hear, that STEPS and the police department are proactive with this stuff. But again, it's just something we all need to be cognizant of. It does happen, and let's just be aware of it. So, and with that, we'll move on to communications from the administration. Mr. Medancy.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. Mr. Brown, I appreciate the sentiments, and you are correct. Mr. Pepe spent a lot of time on that interview, and it really hit home with a lot of staff. We got a lot of feedback. The theme for convocation this year was immeasurable impact. And so that student told her story of her time coming through the school's K-12 and the different adults along the way who touched her life in ways that they probably didn't know at the time that they were. So it was really a great culmination to, Mrs. Clark's speech, the Teacher of the Year speech. We did share some data that's kind of hard to swallow about, currently this year, here's the amount of 211 calls, DCF referrals, mobile crisis unit type of emergency room visits, hospital ambulance calls, just to let those people know it wasn't meant to bring them down. It was meant to thank them because somebody recognized there was a child in need and took action. And so I think it was meant to show the staff how important they are. And we did get a lot of great unsolicited feedback from staff. I think that minus the distractions of the start of school, that they actually felt it was a good time to do it because they were able to sit down and take it all in and digest it without being preoccupied for the start of the school year. So, that may be a new pattern for us. With that said, I'm deferring the rest of my time to one of my two members. I have two members, Lauren and Josh, who are both seniors at Southington High School, and they are members of my student engagement team. So I would not claim to be all that fluid in social media. In fact, after our digital threat assessment training last week, I have deleted all social media, so I have none now. But with that said, when we lost the Record Journal, we know one of the things we lost was the ability to get local news out. Good, bad, or indifferent, right? But at least it got the word out to the local community. So as you know, one of my goals has been, I think back to Mr. Carson saying at one point in time, we need to raise the profile of the district. We need to get information out there. And so slowly but surely we tried to find what's a system that will work that is sustainable. And so I turned to a couple students who are on Team 195 for robotics, and I was just admiring the work they do. Some of the video they create, some of the content they create, some of the marketing that they are doing for Team 195. And I said, would you like to help the district? And this was late last year, and they jumped at it. So I couldn't thank them enough. We now have a process where all administrators district-wide have access to a link. It's called ClassLink. It's either on an app on their phone or on their desktop, where they can click on it and they can submit content from anywhere, anytime. That gets sent to me. I review the photos, I review the prompt, and like I said, what's happening in this picture, and then I click submit, and it gets routed to my two students who manage our social media, and they post for us. They're now getting into a rhythm. They pretty much, I said, hey, I approved a bunch on Friday. We've got the meeting come up. They said, well, yeah, we have a time set aside where we do mass uploads each week. They've taken that on, and we've now gotten administrators into the habit. Pretty much Friday afternoons, I get a ton of content from the week. So she's showing the process. So it's who is this approving it, which would normally be my email address. Do you approve? We go to the next slide, and that's after I've gone into the Google folder. I've looked at the picture. I've looked at the captions. All of it's just to make sure what we're posting has extra sets of eyes on it before we publish. And so they're navigating it on the back end. That's the post that a staff member would put in. Mine's a little quicker. But once it gets to that point, it gets routed to Josh and Lauren, and then they begin posting. So with that said, it's interesting. We haven't actually gone live in terms of promoting the Facebook page and the Instagram page. But as you know, social media will find you if you have social media, because it winds its way with metadata through your contacts, through reposts, through connections, things like that, mutual friends. And so I think, what was our latest number, Lauren? We have like 87 followers, and we didn't even tell anybody about the page yet. 88, right? So, but with that said, once I plan on pushing this link out to all parents and families multiple times to kind of get the word out and start to build it. The other thing that took some time we were very conscious of, and this was something that Josh and Lauren have been working on for a while, we didn't want there to be just one post. Like when people, we push it out, they go on there and they look and there's nothing really on there. There's one post of happy first day of school kind of thing. So we've been adding content since the start of school that nobody knows we've been doing. So once they actually go on, they're going to be going back all the way from the apple harvest parades to the opening days of school, to the ice cream socials that were happening all the way through this week. There's a shot of Unity Day. We've got the high school, the career fair, the world language. There's the floats that are on there, all captioned. Staff or people are looking at or liking them, reposting. Some of our administrators who have their own social media accounts, DePaulo comes to mind, they're also linking our district page to their posts so that it's getting more traffic. And then Lauren's going to give you a little bit of a demo that I couldn't actually give you because she's really my site administrator, and show you a little bit more of the information that's on both our Facebook and Instagram in terms of what kind of analytics do we get and how do we know how this is working.
Good evening. So this, as Mr. Medancy said, is our Instagram page, which links to our school website, district website. So information's easily accessible. We have been posting, and we've received things get more popular as we have kept posting. And as Mr. Medancy said, following's growing without us even having to push anything out. We've taken into consideration all of the new branding standards that the district has put out over the last year. So this is our new logo with the black background, same as on the website. And then our Facebook has it with the white background, as that's what Facebook prefers, and it will look more seamless on there. Our official Southington Public Schools logo up there. And this is our Facebook page, which is absolutely identical to our Instagram page. The same posts go up on both platforms so that all people have the same access to all the same content. This is how Josh and I have been managing the sites. This is called Facebook Meta Business Suites. We discovered this after working with Mr. Medancy and figuring out what was the best way for us to organize what we were doing and funnel it all through the same place so we weren't posting things twice and things were repeating. So we're able to manage everything through here. So I can scroll here and I can see all of the insights. I can see who we've reached. I can see all of our likes and comments. So even though people aren't liking it, that's not our only statistic that we look at as to times of the day when Josh and I post, what days post better, because there is some sort of secret algorithm that Instagram likes to keep from us on what days and times it will push our content the most. So Josh and I are trying to discover that from the back end. We'll get there. But this just allows us to see everything that's happening on here. And then, per Mr. Medancy's request, I would like to pull up the reel that was recently made by Josh and I of our high school track after it was finished, with all of the new upgrades, the blue track, the blue piece in the middle, as well as the removal of the light post from the bleachers, so now everyone has the same view. Oh, okay. Okay, I had volume when I started.
So this goes to show you that not only are site administrators, but there are content creators.
That video was shot with assistance from a drone on the same day as our senior drone shot, which will go in the yearbook.
All right, let's
That's awesome.
And so I couldn't be more thankful, first of all, for Josh and Lauren, because I can't do this, but also proud of the work that they're doing, and you can just hear, Lauren as she speaks in terms of them trying to think about how to do this and make it something that's of an added benefit to the district for the long term. So we'll have a pretty large following once we go live with this and start to push it out. I can see us pushing out information relative to budget, relative to snow days, relative to great events that are occurring across the district, homecoming, scholarship nights. I mean, just getting the word out there so people know what's happening. So the information coming to them instead of them having to go to the website or go buy a newspaper or the CT Mirror Online or something, which is great for people that prefer that medium, but we know it's not always catching the largest audience. So stay tuned, more info to come. We'll keep you updated on that. I will send to you in my next weekly update the link to this so that if you want to follow it and become one of our followers, that'd be great. So thank you, Lauren.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great job.
You, Lauren.
Great job.
Very nice.
Nice, very nice.
That concludes my report.
I just had a quick comment. Things like this, I think, is so excellent, especially too as we look in, again, ultimately, we're in a bit of a gig economy as well. So I can't tell you how many people that, as a business owner, that I've had to work with as far as trying to push social media postings and things like that. Like, this is such an awesome opportunity for our high schoolers to really get involved and, look at all the different aspects. Again, if they're not necessarily ready for school, they could still do really well being, again, a sort of a launch into a career, whether it's marketing or that type of thing. But this is cool. That's great.
Our biggest challenge is going to be finding successors for Josh and Lauren when they're.
Well, just the same way that we do the student rep, like I hope you guys are tagging juniors and sophomores, so.
Of course.
I'm sure Lauren's got her eyes on some Team 195 members that might be ready to fill the void.
Awesome.
Absolutely, I do. And
Thank
just
you.
to add on, in our last 2 minutes, there's definitely people watching at home because we are now at 90 followers.
Okay, our next item, communications from the public for agenda items only. Okay, item 7, superintendent's report.
Mr. Chairman, I recommend, and we're on the personnel report, correct?
Yes, Ms. Carmen.
I recommend that the Board of Education approve the personnel report as submitted by the Human Resource Department.
Second?
Okay, any discussion?
Second.
Okay, we have a first and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Okay, old business, 8A, Town Government Communications. Mr.
Just
Dancy?
one piece of news to share with the board. I'm pleased to report that yesterday evening, the Board of Finance approved a transfer of funds. These were funds that were remaining from the paving project that occurred at the high school in the back lot last summer, that we asked if they could be reallocated towards an RFP to develop the architectural and engineering specs for new tennis courts, including relocating, look at the footprint, removal of the gas line, or moving the gas line, essentially, with an ad alternate to consider what parking might be available in that same footprint. And so we're going to issue that. I want to thank Kyle Fickle, who's here tonight. Kyle attended on my behalf and Colleen's behalf yesterday evening. I was at a family commitment. And Steve Risser, they also attended. So they were able to answer any questions the Board of Finance had about the tennis court project as a whole, the scope, the timing of it, and all that. This doesn't mean there's any money earmarked for the project to be done, but as you know, even if the state were to announce like a steep grant, like we just got for the track, you have to have plans shovel ready. So this allows us now to have the plans ready, whether we do it in 1 year or 5 years, we have the plans designed and ready to go. We can also work with our delegation this legislative session to see if there's any appropriations that can be had that might help offset any costs. So I think this is a big step for us to have this ready and teed up to go. So we appreciate the Board of Finance for taking that action. And again, I want to thank Kyle and Steve for attending on the district's behalf last night.
Thank you. Okay, now we're looking for a series of motions.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Move that the Board of Education approve the Southington High School School of Rock new curriculum as presented by the C&I Instruction Committee.
Second?
All those in favor? Aye.
Mr. Chairman, move that the Board of Education approve the grade 8 Science, Unit 1 Genetics
Second?
unit as presented by the Curriculum Committee.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Continuing, move that the Board of Education, approve the World Language Year 1 Unit, 2 Families and Communities, revised curriculum as presented by the Curriculum and Instruction Committee.
Second?
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Continuing, move that the Board of Education approve Southington High School World Language Year 2, Unit 2, Global Communities, revised curriculum as presented by the C&I Instruction Committee.
Second?
Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
Move that the Board of Education approve the Southington High School World Language Unit 3, Year 3, Unit 2, Global Communities, revised curriculum as presented by the Curriculum and Instruction Committee.
Second?
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Move that the Board of Education approve Southington High School World Language Year 4, Unit 2, Global Communities, revised curriculum as presented by the Curriculum and Instruction Committee.
Second?
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Continuing, move that the Board of Education approve Southington High School World Language Year 5, Unit 2, Global Communities, revised curriculum as presented by the Curriculum and Instruction Committee.
Second?
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay,
I believe that completes them, Mr. Chairman.
thank you, Ms. Carmody. Okay, item 9A, new business, capital improvement plan. This is a first reading. So if anyone has any questions, you can get back before our next meeting when we'll take action. And then 9B, our district data presentation.
Good evening, Board. I'm here today with Alicia Nalway and Stephanie Lawler, our ELA and math coordinators. And this evening, we're going to give you a brief summary overview of district data from last school year 23-24. Tonight, our focus is really going to be looking at K-8 data. As Mr. Medianci said in the beginning, we're going to do an in-depth presentation for high school later in the year and talk about many of those indicators. So just to refresh your memory, the state has an accountability index, which is a set of indicators, there are 12 of them, that school systems in Connecticut are assessed on. Those indicators range through different types of academic indicators, achievement, growth, they look at absenteeism, and then some other high school related indicators with college and career readiness. So as a district, we look at those indicators as well, track those internally, and then look at them across the state and how we're doing in comparison, and how does our work yield results or improvements in those areas. So tonight, we will take you through some of the big ones that we're held most accountable for, and then we will take questions at the end. The first indicator that we will look at is indicator 1, and it's the academic achievement. So it's how well our students are doing with achievement, specifically in the areas of literacy or English language arts, mathematics, as well as science. So the assessments we're specifically talking about results related to are the Smarter Balanced assessments that are given once a year for literacy and math in grades 3 through 8. And then in addition, the science next generation science standard assessment is given in grades 5, 8, and 11. So academic achievement is one indicator that has a high level of importance in terms of the accountability index. So we're going to start there, and then we will transition into growth. I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Lawler.
Hi. Okay. So this slide shows the last 3 years of achievement data. It compares Southington overall data with the state level. You'll see that in 23-24 as a whole, Southington had 65.3% of students meeting or exceeding the goal on Smarter Balanced English Language Arts. This is above the state average of 48.9%. And you'll see here too that this was our highest rate since post-COVID. So we're moving in the right direction. This slide's a little bit different. Although we're focused on the 3 through 8 Smarter Balanced data, we wanted to share with you a little bit of data from last year in kindergarten and in grade 1. With a shift in our core instruction last year in grades K and 1, we had great gains in the area of literacy. This slide shows you the DIBELS data in kindergarten from beginning of the year and end of the year, and in first grade as well. You can see that at the end of kindergarten, we had 87% of students meeting or exceeding the DIBELS benchmark, and 82% of students in grade 1. The triangle on the right, I apologize, it's a little small, but the green at the bottom is tier 1. So with solid core instruction in place, research shows that 80% of students should be able to respond to meeting benchmarks. And then there will be some students who will need some additional support. So you'll see in tier 2, we've got anywhere from 1 to 15%, and then another 1 to 5% in the red needing intensive supports. So if you see the chart at the bottom, it compares the beginning of the year to the end of the year in terms of achievement bands. The blue all the way to the right are students who are exceeding the benchmark, and to the left you have students in the red who would need some intensive support. You'll see at the beginning of the year that red band was large, and by the end of the year it was a lot smaller. So we're moving in the right direction with strengthening our core instruction, and I share that with you because this is what's happening in K-1-2 classrooms this year, and as we continue to strengthen our core in 3, 4, and 5, we hope to see those achievement levels and Smarter Balance increase for all students.
I just want to remind the board that you heard last spring, we talked about, when we talked about the shifts in our core instruction, it was for our curriculum and our teacher practices to align more with the science of reading and the Right to Read Act. So you all saw the reading program at CNI it was introduced to, and then we shared a presentation on the science of reading. So that's the big shift, and obviously the data is telling a compelling story.
The graph you see here shows the last 3 years of achievement data in regards to math, Southington versus the state. And you can see in last year, Southington, the average percentage of Southington students achieving a 3 or 4 was at 64.3%, which is actually the highest level that it's been over the last 7 years, which is great. 5th, 6th, and 8th grade math also had the highest percentage of students achieving a level 3 or 4 in the last 7 years. And 3rd grade was at its highest percentage since 1819. So the data, again, is moving in the right direction.
And then when we look at science, so as a reminder, grades 5 and 8 as well as 11 take the Next Generation Science Standard Assessment, and it is parceled out over a few years because their science was newly added, so that came into play into 18-19, so we have less years of data on that, and then plus COVID. But in terms of science instruction, again, you know, a slight increase, but we're moving in that direction. What I would like to point out is 8th grade in particular this year had the highest percent of 73.3, but I want to point out the fact that while 8th grade is a benchmark year, moving students towards 8th grade and implementing curriculum in K through 8 has been the biggest initiative. So if you think about CNI and what has come through for curriculum, many science units, we implemented 3-5, K2, and then we revamped the middle school. So all of the work of our teachers vertically, I believe, is what is leading to that benchmark year really showcasing. After years of curriculum instruction being implemented with fidelity, we can see the results. But it was a challenge early on just because the K-5 instructional day is tight, so ensuring we have time for science instruction is important. But when we have it and it's being done with fidelity, we can see the impact there. The next indicator will be growth.
So in addition to looking at achievement, we also look at growth. Growth is reported out by the state in 2 ways. The growth rate is the average percent of students who actually met their growth target. So they either met their target or they didn't. The second way growth is measured is by looking at the average percent of target achieved. So it's the average percent of growth target achieved by all students on average. This tells us how close they were to achieving their growth target. The average percent of target achieved is the growth measure that is used for accountability purposes. So you'll see here for ELA, in 23-24, we had on average 60.8% of our targets were met. And you'll see that since the state started tracking this growth data, this was the highest growth we've had. Slight increases, but again, I think we're moving in the right direction in terms of the growth.
And then this is a similar graphic, but for math, and you can see that the average percent of target achieved throughout the years. Last year, it was at 67.1% was the average of target achieved, and the state average of growth target achieved was 61.4%. So we did achieve higher than that, and you can see there was kind of a peak in 21-22, which would make sense. So after COVID, there was a lot of growth in that year, but this past year we had 67.1% growth, which is also good.
So in addition and really coupled with student achievement and growth, it is important to think about students' attendance and being present in school. So we know a huge factor is having our students show up for instruction. So chronic absenteeism is another indicator that the state looks at as well as ourselves. We drill down at the district level to the school level and to the student level. We've put mechanisms in place to have open communication with parents as students are getting close to those absenteeism thresholds. So letters are sent home, calls are made. Our goal is to get kids in the classroom because we know the importance of that face-to-face time and that instruction. So on the left is kind of the state's journey of chronic absenteeism. So post-COVID, there was this real big peak, not just in the state, but in districts with heavier absenteeism, chronic absenteeism. And then the state, as well as our district, has been working to try to decrease that. So currently, We are at 11.1%, so we want to keep seeing that data go down. This is a reverse figure, so we're looking for a decline. But ultimately, the target is 5%. So while we're trending down, we still have a lot of work to do because each percent is a student being there or not being there. So this is a factor that does impact achievement and growth when we talk about each child. So it's something we're constantly keeping our eye on. It's one of the questions when we have a student struggling is, how often are they absent? What's the story? Let's connect with the family. So another important indicator.
Quick question for you.
Sure.
I can't really see it. Is it 2018, 19 is the first year on that graph?
In this graph, correct?
Okay, so that's pre-COVID?
Yes.
Okay, what is that percentage?
For our district?
Yes.
6.4.
Okay, thank you.
Right, so in that vein, Mr. Harrison, knowing where we were pre-COVID, it's trying to get back to that and then to even surpass it to that target goal of 5%. So that summarizes the indicators we are reviewing tonight, but I do want to be transparent and point out, while there were some increases and some decreases, we are well aware there's a lot of hard work being put into it, and there is still a lot of work to do, right? A lot of work to continue to be trending in. So we do want to share with you what we are doing to put efforts into each of the indicators we discussed tonight. So one of the important factors in terms of achievement and growth is ensuring that all of our students, regardless of which school or which classroom they're in, have access to high quality grade level curriculum. So our push for bringing forward new programs such as Benchmark and updating math curriculum and getting science in place is we need that in place for all students to impact achievement and growth. So while we've done that, it's not ending. It's a continuous process. So every course, every grade level, every content area is always under evaluation of, is this working? If it's not, what are we gonna do? What are we going to try? So curriculum is huge. Coupled with curriculum is instructional minutes. So you can have a wonderful curriculum, but if you don't have the time and you cannot make it viable and implement it in the instructional minutes, you're cutting things. So we are constantly looking at instructional minutes, and in CNI tomorrow we will be talking about scheduling specifically at the middle school, because when we think about our instructional day, how are we allocating minutes to implement curriculum? And then we can give teachers curriculum, we can give them professional learning, we can give them time, but the monitoring of implementation, that's another layer. That's coaching support, curriculum specialist support, and that's building and district leaders walking and observing instruction, looking at how the curriculum is transferring to the students, giving the educators the feedback. So it's that continuous loop of monitoring and reflecting and adjusting. The second bullet is data-driven decision-making. So in-house here, we're lucky to have Lyman Systems, which is our data warehouse, which pulls in from all of our district benchmarking data. So each school has data teams or school improvement teams where they're looking at that at the school and student level. And then the district is constantly monitoring data at a bigger level. How is this grade level doing, this school doing? And then we're using that to drive our school improvement plans. And then professional learning continues to be a really important piece for our educators. As you know, our educators work their tails off. They have busy days. It's nonstop. They put their heart and soul in. But us providing them that continued learning and modeling new strategies and bringing them the most current research, all of these moving parts are what we're continuing to work on to impact students. And that's the summary of our presentation, if anyone has questions.
Any questions? Mr. Brown?
I have a question, then a comment. I remember a CNI meeting sometime over the last couple of years. I think it was a science teacher commenting that the curriculum didn't have some stuff in it that was being tested, and the students were like asking questions. So have we covered everything on the tests? in our curriculum?
So it's a great question. So that is one of the challenges. So like, depending on the level you're referring to, I'm going to speak specifically to middle grades right now because all three of those grades are tested grades for Smarter Balance and some of the next gen. There were challenges with implementing all of the units or the standards due to the length of the period and the amount of days in the year. So that is one of our theories of action that we will bring tomorrow in terms of shifting middle school scheduling, specifically related to science instruction, as well as other academic areas who have curriculums that are paced for 60 minutes, yet they're teaching in a 43, 44-minute block. As you know, the high school, part of their shift to block, while it's every other day, that longer chunk of time allows for deeper learning and you get in a groove and you can get through that curriculum differently. And then in elementary, the team behind me recently kind of looked at instructional minutes and different policies and practices to really break down the elementary day to ensure we can implement all of those content areas with integrity. So we had allocated, this is the amount of minutes ELA will take to implement the curriculum with integrity. And then we did the same for all content areas. But yes, in the current model, in some places, we are strapped. And when you're strapped, something gives, a lesson, a unit, and then that means lack of coverage of standards. So we have some proposals for you to address that moving forward.
Okay, second, I have a comment, and this is kind of complicated. I'm watching a series called Genius. It's about the life of Albert Einstein. I highly recommend it, by the way. And I think he's the one who said this, and I'm going to quote it anyway. Everything that can be measured doesn't count, and everything that counts can't be measured. And I applaud what you're doing, and I do think data is helpful. But for example, in the arts, we can't necessarily always measure in objective ways the value of what we're doing. The technology, some of the, we have terrific, like our high school technology, the robotics and everything else is just amazing. And not all that comes out on a test. I don't think we do this, but I know of districts, not even just in our state, but around the country, who, because something is tested, put a focus on what's tested and then eliminate things that aren't tested.
Yeah.
And I want to just caution, we shouldn't be doing that. Yes, the state tests. Yes, we want to do well in all those areas. And absolutely, EL, English language and math and science are absolutely essential. But I would argue the arts are too, and technology and some of the other things we teach about that aren't measured. I just want to make sure we always keep that in mind.
So I'm glad you brought that up, Mr. Brown. So when we get to the high school presentation, the state agrees with you, as do all of us. So we value all of those programs, and they actually created an indicator called Arts Access. So they took something we think may be immeasurable. They measure it by the number of students who enroll in art-related courses. So it may not be looking at the quality of their work, but just getting them access to art education. So when we come back for high school, we will talk about that. We will also talk about other types of programmings, and we track how our students are enrolling in those different career pathway courses. So some of them, they're not about math, science, and social studies, but they are getting students involved in career readiness and passion areas. So I'm actually happy to say that the state has started in language, a language proficiency is another indicator. So they've expanded beyond just the academics. While we've highlighted those tonight, there are more amongst that 12 that we'll be back here to talk further about.
It's good to hear that.
Yes.
Amy, and to both of you, all three of you, after following curriculum for 30-something years, whoever knows, I'm not going to say a long time, I am very proud of what we have done with curriculum, how we have revised it. The teachers come up with all kinds of, all of us that are on the curriculum committee and have been for years, when we see that they recognize what the students need and the changes they have made in curriculum, I think is absolutely marvelous. We should be very, very proud of what is going on in our school system, in our curriculum. I really wish we could get it published to the public so that they can see what we are doing, what's going on in our schools. And all schools, all levels, high school, middle schools, and the elementary schools. Because, I mean, I'm sure you will agree, what we have seen in curriculum, right?
Yeah.
What the teachers come to us, it's wonderful. I don't know any other word to describe what they're doing. I mean, tonight we approved something called a School of Rock. Now, wouldn't you think, how important is that? Okay? Well, to some kids, it is important. And they should be afforded the opportunity to pursue that, correct? I mean, really.
And
There
foreign
are-
language, too.
Huh?
Look at all the foreign language stuff, too.
And on the foreign language, you know. But when we meet with these teachers, and I'm sure we'll see this tomorrow when we meet with the middle schools, I think we're doing that tomorrow, I am so impressed to see how things have changed since when I started 100 years ago, seeing how curriculum has been applied to the needs of the students and to society. It's wonderful. You guys are doing a great job, so keep it up.
Thank you very much.
Great job. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Darrenowski?
Yes, the chronic absenteeism. The numbers that are used, do they include, special needs children that do have chronic illnesses that, prevent them from being in school?
They do. This particular figure is all students, so that includes high needs and non-high needs here. Of course, it can be parceled out further. We don't have that piece prepared for you, but yes, this is all of our students.
In your, I would like to see that,
Sure.
not right away.
We can follow up with it.
If you get some free time.
We have great data systems.
Got a lot of free time.
A couple clicks, we'll get that for you.
But I'd like to see what that real number is. I mean, it's great to include all students, but when you have a matrix like this, it could be skewed, no fault to parents or the child or to the system.
Yes,
Yeah, it's
I'd like to see
absolutely.
what the real number is.
Sure.
So just I'm just taking a quick note. So you want to look at the chronically absent students without excused absences?
Correct.
Because those would be excused absences for students that are either medically fragile, on homebound, or, whatever. We can do that for you.
Okay, great. Again, no hurry.
And just to build off of that, because that was essentially my question. Now, even with an excused absence, as long as they hit that 18-day threshold, they get counted into the
Correct.
percentage here. Okay, great. If
Yeah.
I may, I just had a couple of short things. So, again, this is an excellent report. I'm glad that we're seeing trending in the right direction. Certainly, the changes that we're making seem to be working. You bring up a great point as far as having access to so much data and being able to pull it. I would love to see, before we start making, I guess, huge changes as far as, again, sometimes we have this obsession to try and change, again, if we're not trending well in math, we're immediately looking at the math curriculum and how can we help it? I would love to drill down and see, of the kids that are hitting, at goal or above goal, how many of them play an instrument? With some of these stats for literacy and that type of thing, above and beyond, or the good and exceeding, how many of them have a second language at home? How many of them, are exposed to a foreign language, whether it's, I knew a lot of my friends that went to Polish school in New Britain, from when they were toddlers to, when they were in high school. I'd love to explore some of these ideas as far as, again, like where we could really shift funding. And, perhaps we could find sort of a common ground where we could really make some advancement. I know Mr. Medancy and I, on a phone call a couple weeks ago, we had a conversation about, again, world language. At the end of the day, data is helpful as far as seeing what's helpful and what's not. And, again, we both kind of agreed that, you get a lot of foreign language at the high school level, and then when you get to college, you're having to redo a lot of things because you're really not hitting those thresholds to be fluent. So, you know, again, like maybe it's a good,
And that was more in a conversation about the benefit of if we were able to start earlier.
exactly. So again, like trying to figure out like, okay, well, I think we're doing all the right things here. It's, you know, maybe there's some low-hanging fruit that we could really push forward and make even further advancement, you know, while we're trying to figure out timing and instructional things. So,
If,
sorry.
if it's
Mr. Pepe.
okay with the board, what we could do is present to you what the breakdown that we have at our fingertips.
That'd be great.
And then you can feed back to say, okay, we'd like, because there is incredible amounts of data. We could spend hours and hours and break it down 10 different ways, backwards and forwards. So in order, we could show you what it is we could do, and then you could tell us, okay, see this, and that, and maybe the other.
And is that something that we could do almost in like a workshop setting as far, like, similar to how we do budget? You know, I don't know if we could.
I mean, it's hard to do in real time because
Yeah.
you're looking at actual student names on rosters and
Oh, I
databases
follow
and
you.
stuff, so we
Yep.
have to
So you gotta
pull
scrub
it all and, yeah.
Got it. Yep.
But even if we took the presentation tonight and then gave you the choices of
Almost
this is,
customize it to give you further
this is
information
how you
relative
could see
to
the data.
questions you're asking.
Right.
Yeah.
Sure. Again, like.
Kind of
this
a follow-up
is
presentation.
excellent.
Yeah.
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 Okay, anyone else? Mr. Carson?
Two things. So my first is, and again, I know we covered this last year, you know, in a similar presentation, but can you just remind myself and the board a brief explanation of the growth targets? How are they achieved, and is that, I'm forgetting whether that was a student basis, a school basis, or a district basis?
Yeah, so every student is assigned a growth target based on their third to fourth, fourth to fifth, fifth to sixth. So every student has an individualized growth target, and then they track the growth rate. So they'll say, yes, the percentage of students in our district who met the growth rate and did not meet the growth rate. But for accountability purposes, what the state holds us accountable for is the average target percent, the average
right.
percent, yeah, see, this is an ELA person doing all this math, right? So it's the average percent of target achieved. So as a district, on average, our students met 60.8% of their target. Individual target, so on average.
Gotcha.
Okay, and so I guess, and hearing that, and that's kind of what I wanted to hear to formulate my next concern is where are we missing the target on such a large percentage of our student population? Because if we're at 60-something%, that's a lot of students that to have an individualized target, growth target, and only 60% of those students achieving that year over year, correct? Where can we make up that
So,
ground?
This 60.8 is of their target, of 100% of their target, where we are on average, students are meeting 60% of that target.
Gotcha.
The other piece that, so kind of a good segue to what I wanted to add, and I think you've all touched upon it in some way, shape, or form. The one thing this board has always done a really good job at is recognizing that this data is a snapshot in time.
Yep.
Right? And we never have, since I've been in the assistance role, had those CMT celebrations and put all this pressure on kids and have these breakfasts the day of the test so that everybody's ready to give their best and kids get all anxious about it and, you know, one of those things. And I was talking with Mr. Whitehead earlier today. The reality is all of these students we're talking about are no longer in that grade and they're no longer with that teacher. So we can't really like go back and say, what did they miss and how do we address it for that student? But what we do is and I think you touched upon this, where we see patterns and trends like, geez, our grade 3 to 4 students in this particular, you know, strand, none of them really did all that well. Is that a curriculum issue? Is that a pedagogy issue? And we try to use that wider trend data to make informed decisions about where we might offer professional development, where we might look at our curriculum, you know, and units that we offer. Spot on to what you talked about with science, right? Like if you see this glaring omission of no student seems to be making this, well, maybe we're not getting to it because our curriculum's not guaranteed and viable, right? And so I think the board has always done a tremendous job, and I'm actually really happy for that because that's not always the case. The second part that I would like to share is just that when we're looking at all of this data, we talk about the whole child. So if a child is absent, as you talk about, there's an example of if they're not meeting their growth target, are these students in their seats? We know 11% of them aren't, right? And so that you could take that 40 and bring it right down to 30 because these kids aren't there. The other piece, and I've been trying to speak to this at the state level for quite some time. Mrs. Clark was actually with me last year at the Day on the Hill. A sad reality for our middle schoolers, 6th, 7th, and 8th. This test is not part of their grade. It doesn't matter as part of their course placement for high school. There's no credit for it, you know, in terms of like high school credit that you earn. Many of the kids in middle school get to the age that they're just kind of done with this test and they know it doesn't really, regardless of the outcome, it's not going to impact their future.
Right.
And so trying to get the kids to, like, without putting all that pressure on them, like, guys, this is a really important test, but also trying to get them to realize we do want to see the best reflection of your, you know, your skills and your knowledge so that we can make meaningful and purposeful decisions about where we need to, you know, put our resources and support. And that's been the toughest challenge. There were actually students, the student reps were there last year.
Yes.
One of them was here tonight. And we asked the question, do you guys really like, when these tests roll around, honestly, do your classmates, do you guys put all your into this? And they were like, you know? So I think we got to take this kind of data with a grain of salt. And then we look at more, what are the kids that are passing AP tests in terms of, you know, percentage of 3 or above, or getting college credits in ECE courses, you know, and graduation rates after 4 years of college or 6 years that are still in college. Like, that's the data that's telling, I think, a bigger story long term than trying to maybe look at a 7th grade test score to wonder if that kid on any given day really cared all that much about the test. It's just a reality that we have to be cognizant of. I don't use it to explain away the performance, but I think we'd be naive if we said every kid goes and gives it their best effort on that day.
If I can just add a little point of clarification, because you were talking about growth target, and it can be a little misleading. The growth target gets set based on the original score, and it's not a direct correlation with a grade level expectation. So it's individual, and it goes back to, I think, what Mr. Darrenowski and a few others were saying in terms of wanting to see a breakdown. So it's based on that student's initial score from one year to the next, to the next, to the next. And it does not necessarily correlate with their grade level. So the growth
In
is
some cases, it could
different
be
from
higher than the grade
achievement.
level.
Correct.
The growth target that could be set may be higher than their current grade level because if you want to go back to that last slide, or the one maybe right before it for continuous improvement, I think that bottom piece, the rationale is very important, the bottom 2 bullet points.
You could be high achieving and have low growth based on this metric.
Correct.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Can I make a comment? Oh, go ahead.
Could I, Mr. Chair?
Let Mr. Carson continue.
Yeah, I did, and my second request, I guess, and again, it parlays off of some of the things you were just saying, right? Can we get, instead of the percentages and the numbers as it pertains to state data, can we get the comparable and competitive district data? Because that's much more revealing, certainly to me, and I think the rest of the board, on where we stand. I'm not so much interested in state data as I am, you know, comparable and competitive districts.
Okay.
That's typically referred to as DERG data, demographic reference groups. The state hasn't updated the demographic reference groups since 2014, so I think it's been about 10 years. We know there's been a census in 2020. I actually asked the question. I wanted that information. I wanted it for budget purposes. I wanted to say, whoever's in our demographic reference groups, what is their per pupil allocation? What are their total operating budgets? Because what resources do they have, right, to move the needle? And the person at the State Department of Education assured me they were never going to renew it because too many districts they felt were misusing it that way. In terms of comparing apples to oranges, like Southington students to, Newington students, So the state school finance project last year tried to redo it essentially, based on the formula that was used in 2014. So we have one that, although not adopted by the state, it does kind of show what the most recent demographic reference groups, if the state were to adopt them, where we would fall and how we performed. We could definitely call that data for you.
Okay.
Okay. Mr. Brown, if you want to follow up, okay. Anyone else? Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So very, very interesting, and thank you for the presentation. So I'm just wondering, for the high-performing teachers, right? And so we can extrapolate that data. Is there any discussion around potentially moving some of those harder to grow students and to put them with the high-performing teachers? Does that make sense?
So I think one of the challenges is exactly what you just said, right? Because if I'm that high-performing teacher and I am then, I'll say, rewarded by loading my caseload with the most challenging students, I'm not sure if year after year I'll be able to turn that high-performing result out. That is why this comes back to an age-old argument of heterogeneous versus homogeneous grouping. And for me, even in a classroom that is theoretically homogeneously grouped, it is not homogeneously grouped. You will have all different ability levels and proficiencies within that class. So it's just and as a building administrator, I've done this, looked at data year after year, and which one of my teachers or co-partners are producing the highest results. And it can depend year after year because of that cohort of students. I think it's important to take a look at our students that are in need of additional assistance and infuse that assistance. And that looks all different ways. I would hesitate to necessarily group and place all of our needy students with a particular grade level cohort teacher partnership pair. It just could be dangerous.
I would add one more thing to that. When I remember vividly when I was going to school for my administration degree, I asked a question within a group of administrators. How do you decide what class to place a student in? I'm thinking from the elementary level, right? You have, this teacher who hits out of the park, but the challenge could be if you put all those kids in that class, that can create what I call unintended consequences, right? Because they may struggle to learn for a variety of reasons. It may not just be learning and pedagogy. Secondly, to Mr. Pepe's point, those teachers realize I'm always getting the most challenging class, and my teacher next door never seems to have that and skips into work every day. And as I thought about that, when I asked the question, I was thinking through a teacher-centered mindset by even asking the question. And I remember an administrator saying to me, "You always do what's best for the student." And so that said to me, okay, I'm going to put that kid with the most, that has that need, with the best teacher. But the one thing you absolutely, and I made sure to do this when I became a principal, that teacher who for some reason never got that kid, it's your job to make them a better teacher so that the following year, it's not always the one teacher who has to get that kid because you have an ineffective teacher that you're not properly supporting or supervising. And I think that's a standard we've held, all of our administrators to, and they can attest to that. Where we see need and support, that's where we're going to target it so that we're always making sure that regardless of where we place our students, that they're getting the best that we can offer. And there's a room for growth amongst all of us. But that's a great question because I struggled with that early on in my career.
Thank you.
So I got a couple of things, and I'm gonna build on that right quick. One of the slide that I was most interested in was the continuous improvement slide, and that was it kind of goes along with sort of what you're talking about, right? And we talk about this a lot in our meetings and the curriculum meetings as well. We're always looking at best practices. So and I'm confident that year over year we look at what's working, what's not working, and how can we help and share, again, our knowledge or experience and what have you that we can leverage across our district. So one of the other things I wanted to highlight, we talked about the maximizing the instructional minutes. I think that's really important because I think this district, and you brought up a few of the things that we've done, this district has really targeted that as of late, right? With the block scheduling, we talked about the iPass system around the hallways to try to, keep from having congregating, communications in the hallways and students kind of habitually out of the classroom. I think all of that's important, and obviously I know that's something that we're going to continue to target and look for more opportunities on, so it's very important. And then the other thing I wanted to highlight is that we talked, the chronic absenteeism, it's good to see that the trend is going down. I think we see this even in business. There's a new norm, right? We see it in our workforce, we see it in the workplace, right? People are, they got used to taking more time off during COVID, maybe not having to go into the office, and there's been this shift. And I'm sure it's happened with our students as well. So I think it's important, obviously, we just have to continue to educate and remind parents, and I know we've been very proactive on that. We've talked about it, actually, it was a couple of meetings ago. We discussed, the chronic absenteeism and, how we need to address that issue and give those notifications to parents. I think it's just important to continue to highlight the correlation between performance and attendance and being in the classroom and being there with your best every day. So, but again, thank you very much for the presentation. I thought it was fantastic. It's great to see the positive results from all the work and the hard work that everyone has put in. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Besusi?
I just had sort of like a closing remark after the discussion and, certainly to what we were discussing before with, trying to engage more with, letting people know about the good work that we're doing as a district and everything else. Just like a case in point, so a friend of mine recently did a presentation, so he's a finance guy, and he did a presentation to a group of about 100 different people about, our IRAs and putting money away and that type of thing. And he asked the group, raise your hand, how many of you pay for your kids to get special coaching, whether it's pitching coaching, whether it's athletic coaching, pay for extracurriculars for like sports teams, travel teams, everything else. Just about every single hand out of those 100 people shot their arm out. He then asked, how many of you pay for tutoring for your kids? 2 people in the room raised their hands. He then followed it up with the statistic, and again, like this may be wrong or old data, but it's something to the tune of there's $42 billion available for athletic scholarships. There's over $1 trillion available for academic scholarship. So, again, like I think it's a perfect opportunity. Granted, like this falls on us to make sure that we're doing a good job and providing kids the opportunity to grow while they're in our schools. But it's such a good opportunity with different social media things and stuff like that as far as being able to reach out to parents. And, as I said, since I got on the board, good, bad, or indifferent, the unit at home is the most important teacher. And how do we continue to engage them and to, again, like these are the investments that you may have to do as well. So, again, this has been a good meeting as far as like bringing those two things together. I enjoyed it.
We'll make sure Ms. Clark is giving that feedback. Moving on, public communications from the public. Okay, looking for a motion.
Yeah. Now you're gonna wait for me, right? Yep. Move to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, everyone.
Wait, I get to move